Hello, all you seekers and explorers out there. Welcome to this podcast from the Alchemy Experience. Today we are having a guest on, and it's Jason Holzer, who's the author of a most fantastic book, Shattered by Suicide, Renewed by Resilience. So we spend this podcast in a discussion talking about the book, of course, and his journey from when he was 17-year-old, lost his father to suicide, and how he's come back and built, his life and his purpose around his experiences. Jason's self-professed purpose in life is to help others build resilience as a means to combat mental health challenges. And he does this through working with children and parents through sports and sports coaching. And his work is most grounded and approachable in his advice and the coaching that he does. So without further ado, let's get into the discussion. Enjoy. Welcome, Jason. Appreciate you being here with me today.
Well, Chris, it's great to be on here, man. Thanks for having me. It's always good to talk to my friends across the pond.
Absolutely. So Jason is sitting over in Missouri and Kansas City, and I'm here in Oxford, United Kingdom. But, with technology, the world is a vastly smaller space than it's ever been before. So I'm grateful for having you, Jason. And having read your book, it's amazing to me, the journey that you've made. And I suppose, it's a hero's story, really, isn't it?
And I like to think that we're all the lone hero of our own story. It's just whether or not we choose to find those battles and face them. I think is kind of what I've learned is that we all in life, if you live long enough, something's going to happen to you. The question is, are you willing to try to be that hero for yourself?
Yeah. So the book that Jason wrote is Shattered by Suicide, Renewed by Resilience. And it's, as I've said in the introduction, Jason Holzer, who wrote it, who is on the call today. And it's really a story about Jason's experiences with his father committing suicide when Jason was 17 years old. And I don't need you to age yourself, but it was a while ago.
Yeah. Hey, it's ironic that we're actually coming up. I've almost lived without him for as long as I lived with him. So almost getting to that point of where, it'll be 18 years in May.
Okay.
And I was almost 18 when he passed,
Right,
so,
right.
yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, it is. Time flies, as they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was the first half of the book was Kleenex tissue territory. A lot of tears shed in compassion and empathy for the 18-year-old boy and the challenges for you and your family. But then the second half of the book was very much about how you worked, the tools you use to get through it, with support around you and the kind of mindfulness techniques that you use to push through. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that, Jason?
Yeah, and when you write a book, and you and I have talked about this too, like you gave me some great feedback. There's a lot of things I've learned even beyond that since when I wrote it. Some of the best methods that we've learned mutually on Mind Valley and other personal growth areas that we've dove into, especially meditation, is one that I've really found to be an essential part of it's almost necessary for me every day. If I don't have it, I feel like my whole day is not. I mean, you can always retract yourself and get yourself back on, but for me, like, there's no better way to start with meditation. That was something I was kind of not doing as much at the time, but I've now made it a daily practice.
Well, it gives you a baseline in the morning to lower your stress levels, as opposed to jumping on Facebook immediately and increasing your baseline. of
Yeah.
stress level, right? So you have a
Yeah.
lower baseline that you can dip down to and get back to, as it were. So it to me, it's energetic and spiritual and mental hygiene, as well as, taking a shower every day. I meditate every day, and I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah. Or like going to the gym and exercising your muscles, or,
Yeah.
you name it. It's like that holistic health of, hey, mind, body, spirit, and
Mhm.
then if you take care of all three of those things, then it's amazing what we can do as humans whenever we truly are in tune with ourselves in all aspects.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the so in terms of the journey you've had, and we'll probably be jumping back and forth a bit here, but one thing that you talk about, and it's in the title of the book, is resiliency. Uh, where do you, when you experience a cataclysmic trauma like you did, um, and in my experience, when the times I've had, not to that, well, I've lost a father myself, but I wasn't that young, and it wasn't suicide, but still a loss. But other situations I've been in, where it's almost like you have a blank space in front of you, and you can't see yourself, you can't actually visualize yourself in any capacity or any identity in the future, right? So
Hmm.
how do you end up with that blank canvas and rebuild that resilience, or how do you find that resiliency, and how do you rebuild and paint that picture of your future self?
Well, if I could go and do a little reverse capping, and my 17-year-old self never would have saw what I have today, and so I think it's part of it is you just take days, like life one day at a time. It's literally like, what do I need today to be okay? And sometimes it's literally like, what do I need today to be okay? Is it like, I'm gonna cry for 5 hours, or is it, am I going to, know, go and, I don't know. It's like, what do I need today to be okay?
Yeah.
And for me at that time at 17, my emotions were, I would literally go from feeling every emotion to feeling nothing. And then that kind of turned into myself of like, asking questions like, what could I have done differently? Like, confusing, complex questions. And it's like, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth. There's some shame. I mean, all kinds of negative emotions get swirled inside of you, where it literally almost grips you and turns you into a vice of, and your body is so exhausted that you literally go numb. And I danced between that, shortly after he passed away, of not even knowing, what do I do next, and it was, part of it was, the community aspect feel of people coming to your aid, of people like, the family aspect of like just checking in on you,
Hmm.
and allowing you to listen what you're going through, and not in a non-judgmental way. Just like, hey, I'm just here to listen. Like, I'm just here to like what is this like for you? And then when you're able to get out of your head, when you're
Yeah.
able to get out of all these like things, like these stories that you're making up, and you're just able to get them out, it's there's it's the start of healing. And there's a grief process that everybody has to go through.
Yeah.
And for me, what I did, what I wish I would have done, was talked to people that could help me sooner, right? I had the classic 17, 18-year-old ego, like, oh, I can handle this by myself. I got this. I'm fine. And what I realized, I was like, that strategy for me was suppressing it and not dealing with it,
Yeah.
which anything that's suppressed will eventually be expressed,
Yeah.
whether you
Absolutely.
consciously do it or unconsciously do it.
Yeah.
And so and for the longest time, I chose not to deal with it. And what happened was, it expressed itself in, lack of self-doubt, lack of self-worth, not confident in who I am. And I was still doing the thing. I was going to college. I was a teacher. I was still doing the things that, everybody on the outside, like, oh, Jason's fine. He's doing great.
Mm.
But, you know, I'm amazed that I was able to marry my wife, because like my confidence factor was like, what am I doing? Like, what does she see in me? And
Mm.
it's other people seeing things inside of you that maybe you don't see in yourself, that helps out too, like to draw that out of you, you
Yeah.
know?
So,
Um,
so you found that the platform of support with people that could just be there and hold space for you, was key to allowing you to express yourself and get these energies out of your system, as it were.
Yeah, and fully like trying to fully like make some kind of sense of what the heck just happened, because um, my family growing up, like my parents have been together since high school. Like they've been together for over 20 years. Like it wasn't a dysfunctional situation. My
Yeah.
dad wasn't an alcoholic. Like he was a blue collar electrician, like doing great things. He was a
Would have been
volunteer.
easier if there were some of those
Yeah,
things going on, right?
he was literally like the last guy you would have expected this to happen to.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody ever would have saw my dad ended that way, So that's what made it even more confusing. Was like the guy that I grew up knowing, who was funny, who was hardworking, who cared about his family, who was loved by the people that are around him, didn't find his own self-worth and ended up losing his own life because of it. Like what
Yeah.
was so hard? What was going on in his mind that made him feel like there was no escape?
Yeah, and that those questions can drive us batty because we're very unlikely to find the answers to them, are we?
hmm
So
We are, unless you're willing to go deep. And
right,
what I mean by that is, like, when I sat in meditation and I started connecting to my dad's spiritual side,
yeah,
like I was able to gain some clarity on like what and how physically true it is or not, I'll never know. But it ended up
doesn't
giving me
matter,
peace of
does it?
mind.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it gave me peace of mind because like my
Yeah,
dad was hurting.
yeah,
And so when I saw his perspective on what he might have been going through, it allowed an understanding to come within me to let some of the resentment, let some of the anger go. And this just happened in my like 15 years later. Until I mean, it took like almost a decade and a half for me to truly start to discover and try to figure out what is going on
yeah.
there.
Well,
And
it takes a while to muster the courage, I suppose, to go that deep, doesn't it?
yeah, because
Because
I mean, it's
it's
scary. It's
yeah, and it's typically quite messy, and you have to relive some of the trauma that you had experienced previously, right?
hmm And what helped was writing my book was I was able to get all that out. Like that was, if anything, I was like, I always say, hey, I wrote it to number one, if it helped one person. Like that was
Mhm.
if it helped one person, if it saved one person's life, or if one dad read it and said, man, I need to stay alive. I need to take care of myself for my children, then it was worth it. But the byproduct of that, like, was me writing. It was like I had a lot of healing from it because I was able to let out through typing, through writing
Mhm.
it out. And that's why I'm really big into journaling too, is because sometimes you don't always feel like talking to people about things, but it's easy to kind of write it and put it in a notebook, and it's out of your. It's just it's somewhere else.
Well, you've technically manifested it, haven't you?
hmm
So it's done. It's out of your system, and you can kind of take the next step from there.
hmm
So one thing I work with my clients on is this idea of and I use the metaphor with the haystack, finding the needle in the haystack, needles being the lessons and being the stuff you want to bring with you from different experiences. And when you try to deal with things yourself, you end up kind of diving into the haystack, and it's very confusing because there's all these straws of hay and not very many needles, but eventually you'll find one or two. Um, and I suppose if you go to a therapist, you'll take one straw at a time and you organize them neatly, and after a long time you can get all the needles out of the haystack. So one analogy I use is that we set fire to the haystack, and what we're left with are the needles, right? And then we take the needles and we walk away. um, so what I tend to do is simplify things and boil it down to their bare kind of essentials. Like, you have an experience as a pure experience, and then it's your perception of the experience that will then help you move forward. So you can reframe things. If you ever had a bad experience in the past, you can reframe that experience to heal every experience that mimics that or mirrors that going forward. Um, so, did you, when you, in your process, did you find that you went down that route of kind of simplifying things and just trying to look at the bare essentials of it, or did you kind of dive into the haystack?
I mean, honestly, I dove into the haystack. I feel like I made things more complicated because of my, you call it stubbornness, you call it, you name it, but like trying to deal with it on your own because I was so young, like
Yeah.
so I didn't have the, I'm pretty sure like a male's brain isn't fully developed until 22, 23, 24, somewhere like that,
Yeah, I think
and
it's even
so
later. I think it's like
maybe
28 actually.
mine still might be going. I don't know. I mean, I'm still, uh, but and so there was a lot of things as I look back on. Only thing you can do is take it as feedback. Like, man, if only I had, but not like dwelling on it. Like, man, I'm resentful of myself for not doing it. But it was like just a learning experience of like, well, good thing, bad thing, who knows? Kind of like is kind of like what I like to tell myself, and anything something that might seem really exciting or seem really down. Like good thing, bad thing, who knows? Trying to keep a poised mentality of
Yeah.
trying to stay calm. Um, but the lessons I learned by, like you mentioned, going in and the needle in the haystack and taking a pitchfork and just shoving stuff everywhere, right?
Hmm.
Was I realized like I need people. I need to open up. I can't do it alone. And if that was the one lesson I learned, then I can take that and apply that to everything I'm doing. Like whether it's my marriage, it's raising kids, it's teaching, it's learning from guys like yourself. Um, it's we were meant to have a village mentality. We
Yeah.
weren't meant to do this alone. And so when you go against that, you make life harder on yourself.
Well, with that experience, I imagine you also develop an ability to open yourself up to being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, but also you open yourself up to other perspectives other than your own, right?
Hmm.
It makes it easier because you haven't always been right.
Yeah. And it's actually easier now because I actually seek people who have different opinions than me. Like, well, what do you see on it? Oh, as opposed to like, what we tend to do in society now, thanks to, if you watch Social Dilemma, you know what I'm talking about. Like we get fed our own perspective all the time. And so anybody that has somebody else's different perspective, we think, oh, well, we're judgmental. Whereas opposed to like seeking other people's perspective actually gives you empathy, clarity. Like, oh, I didn't realize like I was coming across that way, or,
Hmm.
you name it. Like, so for me, I've learned to actually seek people who, you know, think different than me, who actually disagree with me. And if I could see their perspective, now I have a more holistic approach to life.
Absolutely, and I think it enriches life as well if you can if once you sit down and you understand all the different perspectives of one truth, uh, truth being a paradox, where anybody who looks at the truth will have a different opinion of what the truth actually is.
Yeah.
Uh, if you can understand all of those different perspectives, you become more compassionate, as you say. You become more willing to accept others and love others and understand the oneness, if you like.
Because, like there's, and Vishen Lakhiani talks about there's two types of truth, right? There's relative truth, which is like different religions, like that kind of stuff. And then there's absolute truth. Well, I know if I drop this rock, it's going to fall. Like gravity is it's going to happen every single time. So with some of those relative truths is like, that's where we got a question is like, well, why do I believe this? Like, was it somebody else's belief that
Mm.
they told me I should believe this? Is it actually my own? Is it experience, or is it and if it's okay to believe that, if it still connects with you, cool. But I think that's why we don't question things enough. We allow other people to do the thinking for us, and then we end up with a life that we don't want.
Absolutely.
So
I think a lot of times when people start asking the question, that's when they're in for the ride of their lifetime.
mhm.
They start asking questions like, why do I believe this? Why am I doing this? Why are why am I not doing more for myself? Etc. Etc. Once you start asking those questions, then it's that slippery slope to nirvana, as it were. That's when you're it's going to be a messy ride until you get there, but you are going to end up somewhere far better than the just sleepwalking through life, right?
Yeah, well, just an example too, like retirement. The idea that you retire one day and you're just kind of done with your career. I'm like, that's like a sentence for like, hey, you know what? We need you to die sooner so we don't have to keep paying your social security. So
Yeah,
like, we're gonna have you do nothing, and you're just gonna try to just kind of float through life after you've worked for 30, 40 years. I'm like, I'm not retiring, like, because I
no.
like that's like, no, that's not. I'm sorry, but that's an old way of thinking
Hmm.
that it's not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. Like I'm going to keep doing. Now it'll look different. I'll be doing more and more of what I want to do as I build credibility. Like, but I'm going to be doing something impactful, something exciting, something that's going to be on purpose. I'm not just going to be like, hey, I'm retired now, so I guess I'll go volunteer at church for a couple hours a week, or I'm going to go to the grocery store 3 times a day, or it's just not.
Yeah, and I remember the mortgage company several years ago asking the expected retirement age, and I said, "Where's the box for I'm not retiring?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" It's like, I don't intend to retire. They're like, why not? It's like so foreign to them, being a
Yeah,
bank as well. It's like, no, I have no intention of retiring.
and
I
yeah,
just
that
gonna,
concept I learned from like Bob Proctor, who's 86 years old and is like just on like just sharp as a tack.
mhm.
Like his mind is still like. I'm like, that's what I want to inspire to be like. I mean, I want to be like that guy. Like,
Yeah,
holy cow, he's 86 and he has no inclination of like slowing down. And I love what he says. He's like, you know what? Learn to slow your thoughts down, but speed up your actions.
mm,
So that paradox of like, think slower, act faster. I
yeah,
was like, oh, I like that. Like, the more clarity you get,
hmm,
the more your actions will be, in flow and actually more productivity, if you will, because you have so much more clarity. And so then it's easier to take action.
and actually, your thoughts will come quicker as well. So your thought process will be quicker when you allow for that clarity, because there's not such resistance, is there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I think I've set a target of about 130 years I'm going to live. So I got a long way to go. So
That's exciting, man. That means we got at least 80 more years to be friends, man. That's great.
absolutely, you got to stick with me though.
Uh, hey, likewise, man. I'm 30, dude, 35. So that means I got 100 more years.
Well,
So
there you go. So I might have to live a few more years on top of that then. But yeah, no, and thing is, with the technologies that are coming up now, with the exponential acceleration of technologies that we have seen in the past, in the past 10 years, there have been more innovation than there has been in the entire life or humanity as a whole. Um, it is exponential, and it's only going to accelerate from here. We are going to see medical technologies coming up in the next 10 years that is going to allow us to live an extra 30, 40, 50 years,
mm-hmm.
when they are able to grow a new heart that is a complete perfect replica of your own heart, because they take it from your stem cells and all that. It's not at all a pipe dream. That's what's so funny about it. But when you tell people now, because people still live in the thinking of what we have had as a terms of technology, they're like 130. You're dreaming, boy.
I go, not really. It's not as far fetched as what you might think. And it's cool too. Like whenever you say something crazy like that, like quote unquote crazy, the people that are like, oh yeah, that's easy. Like those are kind of give you like the hints. Like I want to be around those kind of people. People that are like, oh, that's not gonna happen. Whatever. Like okay, now I know. Like,
Yeah. Bye bye.
I'll see you later. Yeah, I don't need to be around. I'm sure you're a nice person. Don't get me wrong, but I don't spend too much time with you because you don't want to be brought down from like that thinking too. It's just.
No, you become. Where did I see that? So in 5 years' time, I think it was someone who wrote it on the Telegram group that we're in, but they said, yeah, what you read now and the people you surround yourself with now is going to be who you're going to be in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. which to me, I was like, man, I'm really excited about that because
Yeah,
like people you choose to associate yourself with, that's who you're going to become. I'm like, huh, heck
uh,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. It's very cool, isn't it?
yeah,
So, so now the you've come to this kind of enlightenment of your situation, and you've been able to, through resilience, take yourself through, and with the support of your community, take yourself through to, growth. You made yourself a hero of your own story, right?
hmm.
And I'm sure you wouldn't uh, proclaim it that way, so I'll do it for you. um, but
Well, thank you.
so you created this concept called 4D athlete, um, and you're looking to use athletics as a means to attack. I don't mean to say attack, but to work with suicide prevention and mental health. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sports is an authentic thing that a lot of things that we learn in sports transfer into other areas of life. So we feel like it's an injustice not to teach athletes, kids, you name it, while they're playing sports, the skill sets that they truly need, the essential life skills that they need to be successful in anything they do. And what we've seen in America here is that a win at all cost mentality. Like it's focused on what you do on the scoreboard. Like it's did you win, did you lose, and that bases on if you were successful or not. And so our thing is we have these athletes who are in multiple years that we can form them into like super athletes, superhumans, you name it, by teaching them skill sets that are going to make them resilient, better decision makers, more compassionate, understanding how to build habits, their own definition of success. But we're missing a mark on something. And again, we feel like I would go on to say it's an injustice not to teach them while they're that age. It's an injustice to only seek wins and losses. For us, it's like, how do we truly transform people through athletics? How do we use sports and bring it back to its root ages of the Greeks and what they use sport for? Because that's timeless. Like, there's these things that are just timeless that carry on that were here before I was here, and that will carry on after I'm moved on. So for us, we see an opportunity to have this catalyst to bring, because kids love to play, kids love to be a part of something. It's it's
Hmm.
it's tribal, it's in our nature to be, but it's very safe. It's safe to fail. Like in baseball, if you get out 7 out of 10 times, you're considered successful. Like so there's so many things that you can teach. um and we feel like that's what we want to do as 4D athletes. And 4 dimension 4D means environmental, spiritual, physical, and mental. So the holistic approach of
Okay, yeah.
teaching athletes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's very exciting, and I think if you can get that balance right within sport, it's a wonderful experience. And correct me if I'm wrong, but humility is one of the key aspects in creating a safe environment in sports, wouldn't it be?
Oh yeah. I mean, it goes back to being, a balance of being bold and being humble. Like, hey, you know what? You can say, hey, you're gonna, hit a home run or something like that, or score the winning goal. But if you don't, like, yeah, I tried, but I know I might fail. But the greater failure is not going for it in the first place. The
Hmm.
greater failure is staying on the sidelines in fear, as opposed to going after something bold, knowing very well I might fail, but I would rather see where I get to as opposed to not try at all. You know?
So, so what's the challenge? Obviously, with you guys working with children in little leagues and what have you, uh, they look up to all of these sports stars in America, where egos are quite inflated a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
and
Can
there's a
be, yeah.
lot of money in circulation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the focus on the money, and the sport, or the sports stars are not always the most good character or good role models, if you like. How do you battle that when your kids kind of look at that as their role model? How do you get them to see the values that should be intrinsic in sports.
Well, the good news is, Chris, there's a lot of athletes. I mean, for every one athlete that is, egotistical and self-conceiting, there's also on the opposite ones that are very, altruistic and have high character and have a likable, like I would love my kid to be like that kind of thing. So it's us, our mission next is like, finding those coaches, those athletes that have that same holistic approach mentality to help shift the mindset of what sports is now to what we think we were trying to get back to. So it's literally like, and here in Kansas City, Missouri, we have that in our backyard with Patrick Mahomes, who is a phenomenal athlete, who's very young, but also seems to be a great leader. Seems to have a lot of things in place that he's going to succeed. Like his dad was a former professional athlete that did a lot of good things. So it's connecting with influential athletes like that have a mission and a purpose beyond the sport that they're playing.
Okay. Well, yeah, because that's always a challenge with your own children, right? Or my own children, who said the
Mm-hmm.
children it is now, that they listen to music and they watch YouTube, and they pick up a lot of questionable viewpoints, coming asking, "Oh, Papa, is this true? I saw this on YouTube," and it's like, don't believe everything you see on the internet.
Yeah.
But it's the same. They are impressionable, and they do pick up cues from people they revere. And sports, I know in America, I suppose over here in Europe as well, with the World Cup, I suppose
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing here for us, with the what we call football and you call soccer. But like, you have the World Series, you have the Super Bowl, then you have the collegiate athlete sports. I mean, it is such a integral part of the American fabric, isn't it?
Yeah. I
That
mean, it's amazing how much. It's funny too. As I look at this, I was like, why is like the top like the only thing that's not really the top thing is soccer. Like soccer is way better in Europe, way better in South America, way better in other parts of the world, where the U.S. does not have. And hockey is better in Canada, right? Cricket's better in India, but like football, baseball, basketball, American football, that's all pretty much located in the United States.
yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's interesting to see like how much of a big deal sports is in America compared to other places in the world. Like, I don't think other places in the world really emphasize sports as what the United States does, except for the World Cup, except for soccer. That's one exception, I think,
Yeah, and
to that.
I think in most other countries you have, like in Sweden, for example, ice hockey is a huge thing.
Mm,
The town I grew up in southern Sweden, we have two handball teams in the top league in Sweden. So handball is like religion. But in
okay,
America,
yeah.
I think you have more sports. It's more sports that are very popular, like baseball and football, and what else do we have?
Basketball, yeah. Hmm.
Basketball. You have ice hockey is also NHL, obviously, huge as well. So how do you tie in this with, just tying back to the suicide prevention? How do you tie this in? Is it to get the kids to grow up and be resilient and uh, not have end up with suicide ideation, or is it bringing the father or the mother or the parents to interact closer with the children in through sports? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a village mentality, right? Of raising the awareness of not only the athletes, the kids, but the parents, and then also using the influence of coaches. Because I mean, here in America, I've had a situation where I coach basketball teams, and I have parents come up to me. She's like, "I've been telling my kid to do this for 6 months, and you start coaching him for a week, and then he starts doing it because you told him you're the coach." So it's using the power of influence that coaches have to help them like raise the awareness of athletes, and it's to help parents understand like how to navigate a kid through a sports experience. Um, because, a lot of times parents will feel like that their kids have to play sports or they're going to be left behind, or if they're not doing this, then, or, like some of them like, hey, I didn't make it, but my kid's going to make it. So you're going to play this sport. And, um, so it's really the village mentality of like having coaches, parents, and athletes all be allies with each other,
Mm.
lifting each other up, teaching them the things that, things like, what is your definition of success, how to build habits, what's the connection between your mind and your brain, how to be relentless, how to be resilient, how to build communication skill sets, nutrition wise, how to use food for fuel as opposed to food for pleasure, right? Which is, that's fine, but like the sole purpose of food is to fuel your body. So what are we doing there as well? And so it's raising the conversations that are being had and using sports to really get those started. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you end up in the situation where you have, unfortunately, a lot of times it's the dad who comes to practice and says, "Hey, kid, don't mess up out there, or don't fail out there," you know, or screaming at the ref or what have you.
hmm
Uh, how do you deal with those situations? Is that an opportunity? Do you see it?
It can be, yeah. I mean, and that's where we educate. We're working on educating the parents too. Like, don't make this about you. Like, don't like, this is about your child. And if we can help them understand that, this is their experience and that failure is okay and that things aren't always going to go their way, and that you are actually the example of what your kids are going to be like, whether, your kids admit it or not, they're going to be around you the most. So they're going to become who you're like. So if you're the radical, like, and it's funny here in America, like, in a game, it's like competition, like just fuels emotion. Like you'll see people going ballistic, like, dang, I didn't know that was like that they were like that. I've never seen them like that before. It's like, we have lost the ability to understand why we have our emotions, and we allow them to overtake us in competition. Can bring out the best in us, or it can bring out the absolute worst in us. And more times than not, unfortunately, it's bringing out the worst in most people.
Well, it is the idea that for men predominantly, it's okay to have an emotion, which has to be changed as a societal mindset, I think, uh, and also the idea that when you have an emotion, sometimes it hurts, and it's okay. And
hmm
it's like the more like you were saying in the beginning, the more you resist that, the more it's going to persist, and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt later. So when you do experience that emotion, to allow it to come up, and just come through you, and that's why I find very important for children to learn right off the bat that having an emotion is okay, and
hmm
allowing that emotion to express itself, because it's a way for your body or your body and your soul and your energy to communicate with you
hmm
that this is how I feel, listen to me. And if you don't listen, it's going to come biting you in the butt much later.
Yeah, like every negative emotion is telling you, hey, this is not working. I don't like this. Like
Yeah.
this is, and so as opposed to reacting to an emotion, like learning to respond to, like, oh, what's this telling me? Oh, I should probably maybe pivot my action because I'm not liking it. And on the flip side, like, oh, okay, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I should probably keep doing it. This makes sense to keep going there. So yeah, it's like its emotions are our inner communications, and whenever we understand that,
Mm.
it helps us make better decisions too. Whenever we use our emotions for their purpose and their intention.
So there's a lot of talk now in the corporate world about mental first aid. Is that something you bring onto the pitch or the field or whatever it may be, the diamond?
Yeah, it's
Is that something you
we kind of
teach the children and the parents?
like it's in our curriculum of like why your mind, how your mind works, and then how you can giving like little action steps too, and then we're building out meditations, we're building out things to help people as well. Like we aspire to be the Mind Valley of sports, right? Like the
Right.
the the personal growth hub of but niched into sports, and so that's kind of like what we want to become or what we're aspiring to become. And we have these things on the horizon, since we've only been really like saying, hey, this is a thing since November. So we're only 2 months in. So we're very early in the process. But as we see this growing and expanding, yes, that's going to be a huge emphasis on, because if your mentality creates your reality. So if you don't take care of that first, it can't go backwards. There's one cycle all the way through. It starts with your mentality, and so that's what we're going to be definitely emphasizing for sure. Working with experts in those fields, is our goal too, like psychologists, psychiatrists, mental performance coaches, you name it, meditation experts, on what are the multiple ways that other people can find that's going to work best for them to take care of their mental health.
Do you meet resistance among the kids and the parents in terms of some of these more metaphysical aspects, like when you start talking about spirituality or the spiritual and the meditation and so forth? Do you meet resistance in that?
We haven't yet, but again, we're early. So, I mean, is it possible to come up? Yeah, it is. But what we can do is like, hey, you know what? Here's my results. Okay. You can always go back to like, this is what I'm doing. And these are some of the practices that we're implementing. So look at the results. Like because what people don't understand, they judge. They don't get, most of the time people don't get curious. Most of the time they judge it, right? Like I've learned to get curious if I don't understand something. But I used to be judgmental more so whenever I didn't understand something. So taking that flip side of like building curiosity through the results that you're getting personally, I think will help ease into that spiritual side of things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is exactly like you say. People don't understand what they don't, um, what they're not familiar with. So bringing something like meditation, just the word meditation might scare a lot of people off, but just using different method or terminology like relaxation techniques or whatever it may be. And I mean, one thing I teach my clients that don't have a meditation practice is to just sit first thing in the morning, swing their feet over the side of the bed, put their hands on their chest, and breathe.
Mm.
If you can do
Yeah.
that, then you got,
Mindfulness, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Just practicing mindfulness.
yeah, and then you're meditating, and they're like, really? It's that easy? It's like, well, yeah, meditation is not. There's no set rule that this is meditation. It's like
Yeah.
it's like sleep. Meditation comes to you, and
Yeah.
the more time you spend just allowing yourself to be with yourself, the closer you're going to get that meditation to come to you, right? So
Which is yes, it's in some ways it might be tougher for a lot because there's so much distraction, especially with devices, and like some of the downsides of technology is like learning best practices, and if you don't learn those, then it's like your mind's just continuously distracted and flooded with things that you never allow you to get to a deeper state of mind.
no,
But that's
absolutely,
one thing is
absolutely.
that we're trying to help out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose if you have any kids that practice any martial arts, all the dojos practice some sort of meditation before and after
Hmm.
practice, as far as I
Hmm.
know, anyway. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah, for sure.
might be an easy way to explain it that way too. So the what's the work? Just to kind of we have a few more minutes left here. So what's the work being done now to uh, bring the social stigma around suicide and suicide prevention and mental health, because you can't go about preventing suicide without addressing mental health, right?
Hmm.
So what's the work being done now? Because I know you're involved with some organizations there, right?
Yeah, a lot of it, like I'm involved with the United Suicide Survivors International. A lot of it is like storytelling, connecting through stories. It's creating a safe space for people to express themselves. kind of the study of like what are the causes and how do we take a more proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. Like, and it starts with things like teaching more people about meditation. It's like, you know, not making it so taboo to talk about, like, where if you are having thoughts, like, you know, there's a lot more, you know, like there's like 911 dials now for people to call anonymously, or and so that's kind of where it seems like it's going, is, you know, focusing on storytelling, focusing on a more proactive approach, which is, like you said, incorporating meditation, understanding your mind body connection, you know, understanding like what's causing the thoughts that's going on in your head, um, and learning how to challenge your thoughts, learning how, like, yes, you can challenge the thoughts that are going on in your mind, and you can create original thought. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us unique and different than any other species, is we have the ability to challenge and create our own unique thinking, you know.
Well, we don't need to define ourselves by our previous experiences. We can actually, one of our superpowers I like to talk about is that we can time travel,
Mhm.
um, especially when we meditate, and we can go back and look at experiences we've had previously and change our mind as to how we perceive those experiences. Instead of looking at something from a negative point of view, we can reframe it and say, well, you know, this is one of many possible, you know, hundreds of different possible perspectives I could take. What is one that might be more suitable to,
More beneficial, yeah.
yeah, might help me as opposed to put me on my ass. You know, it's
And I like to use the question, like, why is this situation working in my favor, or how is this working in my favor? Like, well, I just, again, building wonder and curiosity. Like, ah,
absolutely.
man, it may not be and that doesn't mean it's going to be enjoyable, easy. It might be uncomfortable. It might be, you know, challenging, but it's like when you give it purpose and you're like, oh, this is like, maybe I needed to go through this because it's preparing me for what's next.
Yeah.
And so then when you create a positive meaning associated with the event, that experience you're having, it makes it, you know, more worthwhile. You know, it gives it purpose. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's the what Viktor Frankl talks about, man's search for meaning, is that when you strip everything away, like the Nazis did with the concentration camp prisoners, if you like, uh, you know, they stripped everything away. Like they didn't
Hmm.
have names, they had a serial number, that was it. They barely had clothing
Nothing.
on the backs of
Yeah.
on their backs. Um, so what was left was man's search for meaning, right?
Hmm.
And was that idea, and you can always find meaning in every single possible situation, as I'm sure you've been able to glean some sort of a meaning from your father's early demise.
Hmm. Yeah. And if, you know, if Viktor Frankl can find meaning in what he went through, man, like,
We all can, can't we?
yeah, yeah. I have no excuse. I literally, like, my life is, I'm so thankful for where I'm at right now. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, if that guy can do it, you know, then surely, I mean, it should be a walk in the park for myself.
But then again, I think people also need to, and I think that's part of the mental health aspect, because a lot of people are probably walking around saying what we're saying. No, oh, I shouldn't complain because people have it worse. But at the same time, the trauma one experience is from one's own perspective, and it's from one's own platform of experiences.
Hmm.
So, if the worst thing that happened to me was that I got a slap by my mother when I was 5 years old, then that's the worst thing that is a trauma.
Hmm.
So just because it's not as bad as something that happened to someone else, it doesn't diminish the importance
Doesn't
of the
take away.
individual. No,
Yeah, because everybody's always living through the lens of their own personal experience, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah. Hmm.
So I think that's
Sure.
important to recognize as well. And so, how do people? I'm going to put this in the show notes, but how do people get in touch with you, Jason?
Yeah, LinkedIn, and Instagram are kind of my most active ones, as well as our websites forwardathletes.com.
So that's a
Um,
numeral 4D for Delta
number, yep,
athlete dot
.com.
com. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. And
Yep,
of course, your book, Shattered by Suicide, Renewed by Resilience, is available on
it's on
Amazon.
Amazon. Yep,
Yeah.
it's the actually the audiobook kind of a as we wrap up, the audiobook's kind of a cool story. You're able to put it on like this partnering company that will let you put it out if anybody wants to audition for it. And a guy out of Las Vegas reached out to me and said, "Hey, I lost my son to suicide on May 8th of 2019. He's like, I would love to do your book. I'm a voiceover guy. I have a radio station in Vegas that I make audiobooks from." And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." And May 8th was actually the day my dad passed away, which was
Oh,
like, holy cow. I mean, kind of those like,
there are no
that was,
coincidences.
yeah, it was like I could have never have done that myself. That was much more than, there was something more than me that did that. Higher intelligence, God,
Yeah.
however you want to phrase it, right?
Yeah.
And so he did a way better job than what I could have ever done. And it's on audiobook as well. Yeah,
Oh, cool. And that's on what site?
Audible.
Oh, it's on Audible. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that's through Amazon as well then.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Cool, cool. Yeah, no, it's been great talking to you, Jason, and really kind of diving in deep into some of the work that you're doing, but also the some of the experiences you've had, and thank you for coming coming up today and showing yourself vulnerable and sharing with us.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me, Chris. And I've learned so much from your insights recently too. You're so well written as well. You have such a gift and skill to write too. And the things that I have learned from yourself in a short period of time that we've known each other, I'm excited to, as the future grows, and especially once we're able to be out and about again and travel and that kind of stuff. It's gonna be very exciting. I'm thrilled to be in the same space as all the people that we're getting to know as well. Physically, same physical space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be wild, isn't it? So we're all looking forward to that, Jason. And
Yeah.
but thank you very much for your kind words and your encouragement. I appreciate that myself. So, but I thank you for joining us today. And this has been Jason Holzer joining me today talking about suicide prevention. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. I, for one, is a huge admirer of people that make their way through these types of terrible traumas and challenges in life and come out stronger for it and can bring that type of healing to others that are experiencing the same thing. So I wish Jason all the best and good luck in his work, and as he reaches out to the millions and millions of people that should be touched by his work. And I appreciate you for spending this time with us. If you're interested in other episodes of our podcast, you can get those on our website, thealchemyexperience.co.uk, where you will also find guided meditation recordings, writings, as well as information about our coaching services for individuals as well as businesses, and also how you can train with us in meditation. I hope you will join us for our next podcast, which will be released on January the 22nd, and this is 2021 we're talking about, when we will be having a group discussion about compassion. So until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.